So last night, Dave Allen took on Filip Hrgovic in a kind of was kind of billed for Dave as a homecoming event at Doncaster Football Club. A lot of people, when this was announced, saw this as a complete mismatch. I did as well originally. In my sort of preview, though, I did say that, and I still stand by this, that for me, Filip Hrgovic is not the top elite level for me. And a lot of people are saying this is, I've heard a lot of people today saying this was almost a statement win by Hrgovic. Kind of like you have to remember the level this was at. Now, I was speaking to a mate of mine, Lee, who was a very, very good amateur. And I was speaking to him before the fight, and I said, mate, I got a feeling this could be a real event. This could be a real good fight. I think Dave's going to give a really good account of himself. And Lee was to me, mate, sort it out. You know exactly how this is going to go. You know exactly what's going to happen. I was like, yeah, but you know, he's lost to weight. He's trained well. I think Hrgovic is limited. Nothing has changed about that. So I said, I think this could. I'm not saying he's going to win, but I think this could be a fight. And Lee's like, behave yourself. And Lee will be watching. So yeah. But nonetheless, I did think Dave would make this a decent fight. From the off, very early on, by the way, My Way, isn't that a tune? That is a tune. I had that blaring, and I was talking to Bob at the time, Canada's boxing channel, and he was voice messaging. I could tell he had it on as well. And great tune, and a great entrance tune, that. Starting out this fight, all 3 rounds have had a very distinct pattern from the off. Hrgovic said afterwards in a couple of interviews that he felt that the matchmaking of this fight was an insult to him. And he's got every right to think that, hasn't he? Let's be fair. For his level, being matched against someone like Dave Allen and people stupidly thinking this was actually a match. And yes, I turned into the mug punter, a few hours before the fight, as sometimes I do. I get carried away. Sometimes I'm just a muggy fight fan sometimes. And I make no apology for it. But, so Dave Allen came out, Hrgovic came out. Hrgovic, as I said, saw this as a bit of an insult, and he was going out to treat it as like it was an insult. So he came out high volume, used his jab well, again, loves that right hand, let that go. And for me, Dave Allen, from the start, was very much staying right on the end of that jab and that right hand. There was a couple of times he used his feet to get out of range, but when he did that, he went back in straight lines and back to the ropes, where Hrgovic just unloaded on him. Allen never, and I said this to Bob as well last night, I never want to be one of them people who Monday morning quarterbacks, because it's very easy to say what we think you should do while we're sitting in the comfort of our armchair at home watching a fight on TV and we're not in there eating them. So it is very easy to say, but Dave didn't really look like he tried to get past underneath or roll that jab and get on the inside, tie up, make it ugly. Dave get his head on his chest. It looked to me like Dave, and they'd said this, Jamie Moore alluded to this and David alluded to this as well, that they were sort of very much looking to ride out the first 4, 5, 6 maybe, and then take it late when Hrgovic tends to slow down a little. And I think this might have been a plan, and I think Dave might have thought, Hrgovic is not the biggest puncher in the world, and it's another argument I've made. I don't think he throws that right hand. I don't think he throws that right hand technically well enough to generate the most power out of it. What I do think he does with that right hand, and this is probably one of the reasons why he doesn't throw it with sort of absolute destructive power, is that he can change the trajectory of it after he's thrown it. Dave would do he'd sort of do that guard and he'd try and use the shoulder. So his hands are always very high. And much like Dubois last week, who uses a wedge, if for the right hand, it leaves the top of the head. So Hrgovic is very good at turning that over mid-punch, or turning it round the back, or going up and down with it. He's very good at that. I just don't think he throws it with correct enough technique to generate enough power from it. So Dave Allen was very much in the distance, right on the end of that jab and right on the end of that right hand, which proved sort of suicidal. Dave said afterwards he didn't feel like he was going to get stopped. He didn't feel like he was going to get knocked out, because the right hand was stiff, but wasn't particularly concussive or destructive. He's probably faced harder punches. Well, he has faced harder punches, Makhmudov being one of them last time out. So But it was very much Dave sitting in range, and when he did use his feet to get out of range, unfortunately, it was always in a straight line back to the ropes. Where Hrgovic was very good as well, as and you see a lot of fighters doing this. When they've got someone on the ropes and they're pretty stationary on a 1-on-0, 9 times out of 10, they'll put too much into the punches. They'll fall in with momentum. They'll fall in, and because they've fell in, they've smothered their work. They haven't got room to move. It'll get messy. Referee will break, and then you go again. Hrgovic is very good at, but again, because he doesn't throw, he doesn't put everything. There's a touch of arm punch about him. Because of that, he's very well positioned, and he's not put that weight in, so he can always step out, keep his range. If he throws one, comes in a little bit too far, he can step back again. If Dave falls to the front, he can step back, come back, give himself the room and not smother. That is one of Hrgovic's good attributes, and that's probably why he was such a good amateur. His sort of technique like that. And so it went on, and so it went on, and then the sort of the final flurry was on the ropes. Dave caught on the ropes again, shipping shots again, high on the head. Hrgovic fitting him in round the side and straight over the top. And that's really it. I did, again, let me caveat this by saying again, laying on my sofa Monday morning quarterbacking, I just did think Dave made it easy for Hrgovic because he stayed right where Hrgovic wanted him in terms of distance. You know, it was a case of Dave staying there and Hrgovic being very good at marshalling that distance because Dave Allen just hasn't got the tools or the ability to kind of compete at that level. And like I said, I did think Dave would put in a better performance. You know, but again, maybe that's my just love for Dave, you know, blur on my vision. And the level showed. I'm not stupid. Some might argue, but when this was announced, I did say this, but like I said, you get carried away, and I do think Dave said 5-6 years ago that was probably his best, and he would have done better. And I think he would. And if Dave had acquired that a lot higher level of cardiovascular fitness, we never got to see it because he never made it that far. And Hrgovic was intent, as I said earlier. He felt this was an insult, and he was going to go out there and sort of punish Dave really for the matchmaking. And if you're Hrgovic, you can't really argue him, can you? Me and Bob also talked about it's a shame that Dave Allen has never won the British. And Dave talked about the British and Commonwealth. But he talked about it and he said, oh, if it's Reactpour, don't think I want none of that. And I don't think, well, Dave knows he's not capable of beating Richie Reactpour. And this goes back to a thing I said last week in a video. If you want to stay in to win the British title, but you want to wait until it's a TKV and not a Reactpour, does that take the competitive sort of sport and edge out of it? I think it does for me. As much as I'd love to see Dave win a British title, if you wait until someone, listen, I'm not daft. I know this is how boxing game works. I know this is how matchmaking works. But it's just something for me that, well, if you win it against an opponent you think you've got a better chance, or you know you're going to win, is that slightly disingenuous to me? Does it tarnish it a little bit? History books won't say so, but opinion might. So yeah, and then all the talk afterwards was obviously Hrgovic against Moses Atama. He said a great line at one point, didn't he? And Ade pointed this out. Moses never got to the promised land. I like what you did there. Well, so that looks like what's going to be made. Now, do I think on natural talent, on pure natural talent alone, I think Moses is infinitely more talented than Filip Hrgovic. Now, does that transcend into a win? Not necessarily, because there are still when it comes to Hrgovic, there's no unanswered questions about Hrgovic. We've seen it all. We know all his strengths, we know all his weaknesses. There's no surprises left in terms of us watching Filip Hrgovic. There's a fuck ton of them left with Moses Atama. We haven't seen him do distance. We haven't seen him get hurt. We haven't seen him, A, how he physically takes a shot, B, how he mentally takes a shot, let's say if he gets dropped, and then how he responds after that in a fight when the other guy is still put on him and he's really against it and he's really got to go for the gut check. We don't know any of that. So that will tell us. That will certainly tell us. And I think I called for that fight a long while ago. I think a lot of us did. A lot of us on these channels on YouTube and a lot of the guys in the comments, this is the fight we want to see. It's to seem like the perfect test. Hrgovic being probably the only man with equal toughness to Fabio Wardley in the heavyweight division, but not a destructive enough puncher and not so supremely gifted as to, make it when we want to stay away from him. No, he's an acceptable fight now for Moses at this point. Does it mean he win? We don't know, because that's, again, the unanswered questions. If it's just down to pure ability, Moses wins all day long for me. I do stick to the point where I say Hrgovic doesn't have elite level skills. Yes, I know he's got a great amateur, and you can see that in his professional performances. You can see what made him a good amateur. I don't think he has enough of a well-rounded bag of elite level skills that you can really call him elite level. And I think we've seen that because he's not reached, world championship yet. So Moses versus Hrgovic, that is a genuine fight, and it's one we all want to see, and I can't wait for that. As for Hrgovic in this fight, the fact that the match was actually a nothing fight, and it was probably a mismatch, I agree with you. But the implications of it are quite telling. The implications are quite serious, because now it's lined up that for Hrgovic to go in and fight Moses Atama. When people were saying this was a statement win, you do have to remember that this was against Dave Allen, and a Dave Allen that, yes, granted, on the one hand, it was a Dave Allen that was poor because Hrgovic didn't allow him to be any good, but nonetheless, he was quite poor. So making too many judgments on Hrgovic on this, I look great punching and moving around a heavy bag, but as a heavy bag, and this is essentially what Dave was tonight. So Hrgovic is still what he is. He's super tough. He's got some good. He's got world class amateur pedigree, but I don't think he's a full all round elite level fighter. Moses looks like he can be when we see them questions answered. Don't know. I'll see you all soon. Thanks to everyone who I called for people to please subscribe, and some of you did. So thank you very much. Much appreciated. I'll see you all soon.